The Ligt an injury doubt ahead of the Manchester derby this weekend. The Ligt has been one of Manchester United's best players this season. Over the last 3 months, he's been particularly important. The only centre back that's actually managed to consistently stay fit this season. But as Semenyo comes back, as Luke Shaw's on the way back, and we finally feel like people are coming back, one player may have picked up an injury. We'll give you the latest on Luke Shaw, Mason Mount, and even Amad Diallo later in the show. Manchester United do have some interest in Semenyo, but the most interesting news coming in is Garnacho is moving. Garnacho is moving house, secretly trying to move house, and this is speculated. It could be a sign that he could be preparing United exit with interest from Napoli and Chelsea and many clubs. One thing we do know is Manchester United are open to selling Garnacho. He is seen as replaceable, but they're not desperately looking to offload Garnacho. But if the right offer came in, they would be willing to sell him. We'll dive into all the latest detail on Garnacho and everything you need to know in regards to his sale. Fabrizio Romano speaks about Cherki to Manchester United. What is the possibility of that happening? Are we looking at him? And of course, more. So, hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to your 10-minute Manchester United news roundup. Let's start by getting into the news ahead of the Manchester derby. So, Matthias de Ligt is a doubt from the Manchester derby, and we could see it last game versus sort of Nottingham Forest. You could see him struggling towards the end, and de Ligt had quite a few injury issues at Bayern Munich, but he's been quite lucky with United. But the 4 games we had without de Ligt, we were a defensive mess earlier in the season, and I think actually, he's having quite an underrated season. I said after Bruno, I feel like de Ligt is probably the second best leader on the pitch. He's been that main centre back that's been pretty consistent. I think he's better when playing central centre back rather than wide centre back, because I still think he's got certain limitations on the ball. Like, he's decent on the ball, but it's more about his aerial presence. And I think he's really good in the central centre back role, and he's really impressed me. And I think his leadership and his organisation, we really need him for that Manchester derby. And while we sort of spoke about is centre back a priority, I think the money needs to go on a 10 and a striker before it goes on another centre back, because we play with 3 centre backs, because of the injury issues we've had, because obviously Evans and Lindelof are leaving in the summer. We still definitely need to sign a centre back just for depth in the summer window. In terms of boost, Kobbie Mainoo could return from injury on Sunday, but will not start, which is fair. You're not going to throw him in and start. But Kobbie Mainoo always has a good game versus City. He always has a good game versus Liverpool. He likes those big games. So I think that'll be a big boost to have Kobbie Mainoo coming back, particularly as an option off the bench. But I don't want to rush him back if he's not fully ready, because I think he's been rushed back in the past, and he's definitely had quite a few little injury concerns this season. Going into updates on Mason Mount and Luke Shaw. Ruben Amorim on Mount. Yeah, he can start, but we have to manage his minutes still, said Ruben Amorim on Mount. He could be ready to start, but I don't think he's going to start, because he started the last game versus City, and that's when he picked up his injury. I think Ruben Amorim is still being very cautious to give him a few minutes off the bench here and then, and not rushing back. I don't see him starting for at least another week or two, to be honest. I think they're still being really careful bringing him back, because he's seen as an important player for Amorim's system, and they don't want him to get another 3-4 month injury again. It was also said by Sally Talks that Luke Shaw is an option for Sunday, but it said that they aim him for Lyon. Aiden Heaven is also making good recovery. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a possibility Luke Shaw could be on the bench Sunday, but I think because he's just come back from injury, even if he is available, I don't know if they'd put him on the bench Sunday with bigger and more important games coming up. And Aiden Heaven is also making a good recovery, so it'd be nice to see those 2 players back and involved, hopefully in time for the very important Lyon game. This was said by Sean Connolly in regards to Mason Mount and plans. Inside sources this morning can exclusively confirm confidence from medical officials regarding the nature of rehabilitation from Mason Mount's latest injury. Mace has been devastated with his Manchester story so far, but he is about as confident and dedicated as a lad you're likely to meet. Trust me when I say a fit Mace can propel this team into an entirely different attacking proposition. The belief held between the qualities of Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount is as high as they come. Ruben Amorim adores him as well. We all know from his public comments, but he really admires his mental fortitude and desire to help his teammates. You cannot put a price on what he brings to the ground, and the dresser, I love him, is what was said from inside sources in regards to Mason Mount. Now, this is interesting. Now, Mason Mount isn't a bad player. He's just barely played for us because he's been injured. He's always been a good player. He was Chelsea's player of the season twice in a row. He's always been seen as like a leadership, a very strong player, and all of that. Obviously, this does sound like a little bit of a PR piece for Mason Mount, of course, but I'm convinced that Mason Mount works really hard. I'm convinced he's highly rated by Amorim. He's played in that system before, and I'm convinced those at the club want it to work. Mason Mount isn't playing for Man United because he's been poor. Mason Mount isn't playing for Man United because he can't stay fit. Now, I would look at selling him in the summer if it was possible, because we cannot rely on him. He can't stay fit, but it is not possible to sell him in the summer. So I'm sitting here hoping that Mason Mount can stay fit, because I know his qualities, what he can bring, and so does Ruben Amorim, and so does a lot of people. And I think there's a good player there. And fingers crossed he stays fit, because, you know, he could have a good future with us if he stays fit. But that is a huge if he stays fit. But, you know, he's always known to be a strong character, a good character. So this news doesn't shock me. So there was also a few updates coming in on Semenyo. Manchester United see Bournemouth's Anton Semenyo as a strong option this summer. I like Semenyo, but there's definitely better options out there, if I was going to be totally honest. He's not quite the guy that's going to level us up loads, but I like Semenyo as another attacking addition. Like, he can play right wing back, and he could play right 10, and he could play left wing back, and he could play left 10. His versatility to play wing back and 10, I like. He's not as good as Mbeumo. He's not as good as Cunha for me. There are better players out there than Semenyo, but as an athletic profile and being Premier League proven and ability to play wing back and 10, it's a good option. In an ideal world, you get Cunha, Delap, and Semenyo, and that's 3 solid attacking additions, which all offer different things, but that's particularly not realistic. But yeah, be one to watch. This isn't the first time we've been linked to Semenyo. A couple of sources in Africa, who are apparently more reliable African sources, have also linked us to Semenyo. I think he will leave Bournemouth, but that being said, you know, Huijsen could leave, Semenyo could leave, and then I think they keep Kluivert and Kerkez. I think they will lose 2 of their players, and a lot of people like Huijsen, a lot of people like Kerkez, Semenyo, Kluivert. I think they might lose 2 of those players. Continuing on. So, there's been a lot of rumours around Garnacho and speculation, and interestingly, Garnacho has discreetly put his house in Manchester up for sale. Now, Garnacho has put his Manchester house up for sale. Now, this could mean many things. This is either 1, he's just moving to another house in Manchester and he's putting his house up for sale, or 2, he knows that he could be on the way out of Manchester United in the summer. Considering the fact that over in January, Manchester United had agreed to let Garnacho go, and Garnacho had held conversations with Napoli and Chelsea where he'd given the green light to leave United to Napoli and Chelsea. It wasn't because he actively wanted to leave Man United, but he felt he wasn't wanted and he was sort of being pushed out of United, so that's why he agreed to join other clubs. You know, of course, Garnacho is going to be on edge about his future. Ruben Amorim likes Garnacho, but he's still is replaceable. Ruben Amorim likes Garnacho, but he also thinks he could replace him with a better player. You know, Ineos are open to selling Garnacho. There's interest in him. There's teams willing to give us a bit of money for him. United need funds. I think United are more than willing to sell Garnacho. I think Garnacho could be sold. And I think Garnacho putting his house up on the market could be that he knows he could be going at the end of the season, if I was going to be completely honest. But it also could be that he's just looking for another house. He's just put his house on the market. He's looking for something elsewhere. But it definitely is a bit of a sign, because there's always been a lot of speculation of Garnacho leaving. And I think the fact that he was so close to leaving in January, and the reason he didn't leave in January is because we'd lost Anthony and Rashford with no replacement. Amorim said we cannot lose Garnacho. It does say to me I wouldn't be shocked if he did go in the summer. Amorim was actually asked about Garnacho, and he said, of course, like any player in our team, he has to choose better in terms of his decision making in the last third. We have to improve as a team to help Garnacho, but he's working hard. I see him as a young kid who wants to improve, and I think Amorim looks at Garnacho and says, this is a young kid that wants to improve, that could be very good, but he's going to need time. And Amorim doesn't have time. He needs some more experienced players now. I think he'd be happy to keep Garnacho and make him part of the project. I think he believes in Garnacho, but I also think if there's an opportunity to sell Garnacho for 70 million, and that means he gets the funds to bring in other players, I think Amorim would be more than willing to do that. And I think Garnacho himself is more than open to leaving United. He's not had the best form this season. He doesn't fully suit the system. I think he's even open for that new challenge. Continuing on, Ruben Amorim gave an update on Amad Diallo, and I have to say we massively missed Amad Diallo in that Nottingham Forest game. If he was in that right 10 position, I think he would have had a much better game than Garnacho there. Ruben Amorim said this: Amad is doing well. We hope to have him before the end of the season. We'll see, but he's eager to play and we're waiting for him, is what Amorim has said on Amad. So positive signs. There's a hope that he could be back for the second leg of the Lyon game, but United do not want to rush anything. But they think he could be back very early May, maybe even end of April, but probably not to play by early May. Continuing on, it was said by Fabrizio Romano and Ryan Cherky, it links to United and other English clubs, that Cherky has a release clause, but it's not straightforward, and Lyon insists on certain conditions being met. Because obviously Cherky's got a release clause, it looks like a very affordable, easy deal to do. He's a quality player, and a lot of people are wondering, like, why is no one going for Cherky? But there's probably complicated things in the release clause that you've got to pay a certain amount up front, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, which is maybe put people off. Interestingly, I was just about to finish recording this video, but actually Chris Wheeler has just come out and given an update on the Garnacho situation, which could explain the whole situation. And if he could have put this update out a little bit earlier, what before I was before I started clicking records, I could have added this to the slides and put this in order. But it was said just here, actually, in regards to Garnacho, that sources close to Alejandro Garnacho say he bought the house last summer when his family and brother were living in England full time, but they've now returned to Spain, so the player and partner are buying a smaller place. So his family's returned to Spain and they're buying a smaller place, which kind of makes sense, but also his family moving back to Spain, rumours of him moving. I still wouldn't be shocked if Garnacho was leaving. He is looking to move house. Could he be looking to move clubs? He was open to it in January. I think we'll have to wait and see, but I wouldn't be shocked if Garnacho left in the summer, but I don't think United are prioritising it. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.